No mai, haere mai, piki mai, kaki mai, kia ora iwi, and welcome to 30 with me, Guyon Espiner. 30 minutes, one guest, no cuts. What we record is what you get. Christopher Luxon has been Prime Minister for nearly 1 year. He's been big on business talk of outcomes and getting the country back on track, and points to falling interest rates as a sign that he's succeeding. But what is his vision for New Zealand? Does he have the leadership skills to pull it off? And is he in touch with the Aotearoa of the mid-2020s? Let's find out. Let's start the clock. 30 minutes with Christopher Luxon. Kia ora, Prime Minister. Thank you very much for coming into the studio for 30.
Kia ora, Guy. Good to be with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Look, we'll dive into New Zealand politics in a second, but we're just a few days out from the US election as we record this. What are your hopes for the American election?
Well, look, I mean, the reality is the American population seems incredibly polarised. I lived there for almost 8 years in North America, and when I arrived there, you'd have 65% of a country agreeing about 65% of people agreeing what the country was about. Today, you've got 25-30%, and actually you see people getting into very entrenched camps. So it's a really close election. The bottom line for me as a New Zealand Prime Minister is to make sure that I can build a rapport and a relationship with whoever the American people select,
sure,
and then make sure I advance New Zealand's interests.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting you say that, though. You're obviously concerned. I mean, you're keen, obviously, a big political watcher, and you've got some skin in the game. I know you were slightly involved in Obama's campaign in 2008, or at least thought very highly of it, and you brought him out here, didn't you, as CEO of Air New Zealand?
Yeah, I really respected him as a leader. I thought he had great leadership skills and carried himself with great grace, actually, and good leadership in what's a really tough job. But the reality is, my job as New Zealand Prime Minister is to make sure I can advance our interests with America, regardless of who's there. The other thing I'd say to you is that the American system is a very broad and a very deep system, and it's actually really important that we have relationships across the aisle in America and at multiple levels. And if you think about Congress, Senate, and the presidency, there are key decision makers and power brokers in all of that system. And so when I was there, I went and met both sides of it in July.
The thing I picked up, though, from your initial answer was that you do have some concern about the hyperpolarisation. You've had assassination attempts, you've had rhetoric which has been highly inflammatory. Are you concerned that the beacon of democracy, if you like, which it has been, is in that kind of state?
Well, look, I think actually democracy is under challenge all around the world. I mean, you look at recent elections in Western Europe, you look at what's happening in North America. There are a number of countries and leaders that I've met that look at democracy and say, why would I want it? I can actually, keep my people safe. I can actually grow my economy, deliver public services. Why would I want that? And so we have to make the case for why democracy is so important. And that's why in my international engagements and the fora that I've participated in, that's the case that I'm making, which is that, we believe in liberal democracy. We believe in a plurality of views in our political system. It's really important. We can disagree without being disagreeable with each other. We can attack a record, but we don't have to attack a person. And I think that rhetoric that you're seeing rise across Western democracies is something, and I know we've got our tensions here at home, but that's been my, message to everybody is that we want to make the case for democracy.
How do you feel about having a convicted felon in the White House?
Well, again, my job is to make sure I can work and advance New Zealand's interests
with
the US, irrespective of who they select.
Could work with
That
Trump?
is my job, is to make sure I can work with any and every leader around the world.
So you could work with Trump?
I'll find a way, yep.
Before we leave the US, are we going to join AUKUS?
Well, what we're doing is no different from what the previous Labor government had started, which is to actually explore what we call Pillar 2. Clearly, we're not going to join, the AUKUS Pillar 1 conversation.
Because you're committed, are you, to the non-nuclear policy?
There will be no change, absolutely no change. That is non-negotiable. That is not something up for discussion.
But the non-nuclear side of it, because that's the tech sharing agreement, military tech sharing agreement that AUKUS Pillar 2 would be.
That's something that the Labor government and our government want to explore.
But let's talk about...
But in that context, with respect to defence, for us at the moment, we have to go through the exploration of what actually could we add value to, where would our expertise be.
So where are you landing at the moment?
Well, we're very premature. We've still got a lot of our officials are still talking with the officials of the other 3 countries, the AUKUS countries. That will take some time. But what we are doing is we have refreshed all of our defence leadership from heads of the forces through to the chief, through the defence secretary, through to the minister, obviously.
Okay, so
I've asked them for a new strategy strategy, on our defence strategy, to say, well, what is it that we're going to build capability in over the next 20 years? And that new leadership then will be accountable for that strategy, so that as we invest more in defence, we actually know that that money's going to a place where we are building capability and are adding to our alliances.
All right, let's dive into New Zealand politics. But I don't want to spend 30 minutes or 25 or whatever we've got left for you blaming someone else. So can you tell me, are you responsible for the state of the country right now?
Well, we're responsible for fixing the state of the country, and in the 11 months that we've had so far, I think we've made some tremendous progress.
So you are responsible now?
Yeah, look, I think the reality is...
It's just good to get that on the table. All right, look, I watched Helen Clark come into office, John Key come into office, Jacinda Ardern come into office, and very quickly their personal and party ratings spiked well above 50%. National stuck on 37-38, the election night result. Why haven't you moved the dial?
Oh, look, I think we've actually done really well. I think the reality is that we've made some pretty tough decisions, and New Zealand's in a really tough space at the moment. And so the reality is we need to...
But Key was in there in the GFC.
Sure, but I think this is pretty tough times, if I'm really honest with you.
It's not the GFC, though, is it?
I'd just say to you, when you see huge amounts of debt, you see huge amounts... We've had recession effectively now for almost 2.5 years.
Yeah, and we'll get to how you're going to pull us out of that.
We've got to dig ourselves out of that.
But why don't you think you've moved the dial?
Well, I think the fact that New Zealand people have stuck with us, and the fact that you're seeing confidence at a 10-year high, says they acknowledge that we've inherited a mess. They know we've got some tough decisions to make, and we're not afraid to make them. And they know it's been tough times for them personally. But they do have hope that this is a government that's actually able to move it forward. And I just say to you, when you're doing a three-party coalition deal, to be where we sit today with the support that we've got, I think is absolutely is a sign that people trust us to get them to a different, better place.
Do you feel you've been dragged down a bit by those coalition partners?
No, not at all. I think the reality is we're doing something unique and different that hasn't been done in New Zealand's political history. MMP has matured in New Zealand. New Zealanders have chosen that as the electoral system. We are now making that work. When I talk to my counterparts in the Netherlands or in Germany or in other parts of Western Europe, with an MMP system, it's quite common. You have 4 parties, 6 parties, even 11 parties in coalition agreements. Doesn't mean you're going to agree on everything, but actually that's the maturing of MMP that I think we're seeing here in New Zealand now.
Your own personal ratings have not been great. 25% preferred PM in the latest One News poll. You've looked out of touch at times, and that's what New Zealanders are saying about you.
Oh, I think New Zealanders also respect that I'm actually here to bring the skills that I've got from a previous life to actually sort things out and work our way through the mix.
But being in touch, answer the question.
Well, I think I am in touch.
51% of people say you're out of touch.
Well, I just say to you, I think I am, because I'm out and about talking to New Zealanders. I've done that right from when I've come to politics. It's been a belief system of mine. If you don't talk to the customer, to the public, to the people, the voters, and actually find out what their concerns are, and their concerns have been really played back, and we're delivering against those.
It's interesting you use that word, though, eh? You just use the C word, customer.
Well, just because of my background of when you've lost, when a business has lost.
Do you need to ditch that a little bit?
Well, I would say,
just talk a little bit more normally, because you went straight to the customer, right?
Well, I was referencing it with respect to my past background in business, right?
I know.
And in
but
politics,
you're the Prime
it's the same
Minister of New
principle.
Zealand.
It's the principle that's transferable, which is that if you lose touch with the people, you actually don't have a sense or a feel of what they need you to deliver for them. And I've been very, very hot right from coming to politics that I get out of Wellington as quickly as I possibly can, and I get out and meet with people. But let's be clear, I'm not a career politician, and yes, I use.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that I come from a different background, right? It doesn't mean that I've had to learn Parliament very quickly. I've come through very quickly, as you well know.
Yeah.
I'm the fastest person to get from entering politics to being Prime Minister.
But
it means that I come with a different set of skills, and it means that I'm also not going to be perfect in my answers. Yes, I need to work harder on less corporate speak, but that's who I have been.
Naturally, that's who you are, though, eh?
Well, that's who I've been for 30 years, and that's the experience. And the cool thing is that people from different experiences can bring that to Parliament.
Sometimes it looks like you lack a political radar. You put your hand up for the $52,000 allowance to live in your own mortgage-free apartment in Wellington. And when you were questioned about it, you said, quote, "I'm entitled to the entitlement," before changing your mind and paying some of the money back. I mean, does that show that your political radar is askew?
No, I don't agree. I mean, I think I moved incredibly quickly. When that becomes a distraction, I'm really straight up about that. I've said very clearly, when there's been new pay paid out, all of that will be given away. When there's been, so I'm pretty...
Is that why you changed your mind, because it was a distraction rather than it was wrong?
Well, it is a distraction, and I don't want it to be a distraction, because I really want to focus on getting things done for New Zealanders.
Did you feel it was wrong to claim for that?
Well, that's why I've given it back, because I don't think I need it.
But there's a difference, between saying it's a distraction, I just want to get rid of it, and saying, oh, that was wrong.
Well, it was a distraction, and I want our
was it
government
wrong?
focused on actually getting things done.
Was it wrong?
Well, there's a set of entitlements that politicians are paid, and in my case, as I say, I give away any pay increase, I give away any tax increase. I've forfeited that allowance, which is perfectly reasonable. I think that's the right thing to have done.
You didn't get a honeymoon, really, did you?
Well,
Not in your marriage, in politics.
Well,
as Prime Minister.
Well, I think you've just got to understand, everyone comes to politics with a different set of backgrounds and experiences. If you think about me, I grew up here in Christchurch, went off overseas for 16 years. Yes, I did well in business life. I came back home. I came into political life. I had that first year actually in politics in 2020 and our terrible election result. I had 6 months of it in lockdown. I came out of that. In less than a year, I was sort of now the leader of the National Party, the sixth leader since John Key in a 5-year period. And then we moved very quickly to modernise our party, to get our team working right, and then win an election.
Yeah. But you didn't, partly from my observation, you didn't get much of a honeymoon because the things that stuck in people's craw a little bit were some of the things that you signed up to in those coalition agreements, cancelling the smoke-free generation or putting forward the treaty principles bill, some of the things that the coalition partners were wanted and you sort of had to sign up to or felt you did.
Yeah,
Did you sign up to things that you shouldn't have? Take the treaty principles bill, for example. Do you regret signing up to that?
No, the reality is I don't like it, and David Seymour doesn't like what we've agreed either in our coalition agreement. But as I said to you before, we have to acknowledge we're in an MMP environment.
But why
not
did you sign up to something you didn't like? And you think it's divisive, eh?
Yeah, I do. And I won't support it beyond the first reading.
But here you are, as Prime Minister of New Zealand, you are allowing this division to permeate through.
No, but let's take a step back, Guyon. You have to say we are in an MMP environment, right? It is a maturing MMP environment. We have 6 parties in the Parliament that actually have quite different views from each other. The system that we are asked to manage in and deliver in is an MMP system.
Sure, but you did not have to sign up to that. Well, you could have said no.
Well, absolutely, but actually what we did was we're being very pragmatic to say I don't like it. I didn't get what I wanted. David Seymour and ACT didn't get what they wanted. We came to a compromise as MMP and coalition government requires us to do, and that's exactly what we did. So we won't be supporting it beyond the first reading because it's not something that I do support or think is very helpful.
Let's go back a bit to some of your core beliefs, and you talked about coming in 2020, and in your maiden speech you said, quote, I believe in tackling inequality.
Yeah.
You went on to talk about the balance between hard work and innovation, but you did say, quote, I believe in tackling inequality.
Yeah, big time.
What are you doing as Prime Minister, as Chair of the Cabinet, to tackle inequality?
Yeah, well, what we don't believe, like some of our opposition do, is an equality of outcome. But we do believe fundamentally in creating equality of opportunity. That actually 5-year-olds in this country, we should be doing everything we can to get them to the start line so they have an equal shot at their version of the Kiwi dream, whatever that may be.
So why are you cutting $130 million from school lunches, for example, then?
Well, because we're actually feeding 10,000 more kids, saving $130 million that I can put into schooling and education and healthcare and other things. That's us being smarter with money. And just because we're doing, the money's important, but actually what you do with that money really matters. And the reason we've got so much pain and suffering in New Zealand is that we have had abysmal economic management. And you may take economic management and financial discipline for granted, and it's not particularly sexy stuff, but good economic management matters because when you don't see it like we've just experienced, and it didn't need to be like this, it didn't need to be this bad, if that previous government had controlled inflation and adjusted its spending earlier.
Yeah, we talked at the top of this interview about you being responsible.
No, but it's important from a context point of view, Guyon, because otherwise, the reality was, you can go back and look at my remarks about guys saying to the previous government, hey, listen, there's amber lights on that dashboard. If you don't deal with inflation and its causes, you end up causing huge pain and people start losing their jobs. And that's where the situation we are in today. So we're fixing it.
So when I say, what are you doing to tackle inequality? Your answer is what?
Well, look at what we're doing around making sure we get our kids a better education system, get our kids to school, teach them structured literacy, one way, same way, better way to read, evidence-based approach, make sure we introduce a better maths curriculum. We can't have 4 out of 5 of our kids heading into high school not with any We can't have 1 out of 2 not reading like they are.
That is going to take many, many years.
Well, what's
and a whole
the alternative,
generation.
though? Are you saying I shouldn't do any of that stuff? The point is, I want to make sure New Zealand kids are set up for a great future, and that's how we deal with inequality.
Okay, so that's...
I'm a big believer in education because it got me out of a set of circumstances to a better set of circumstances, right? Like it did many New Zealanders.
You also...
But I have to front that because if you believe in social mobility and you believe in actually people, irrespective of their circumstances, to keep working on perfecting the opportunity for New Zealanders, that means I have to work on education, I have to work on healthcare,
you also said
have to work on housing.
In your maiden speech, you also drew on your Christian faith, and you gave examples of Christians who had, quote, challenged the rich to share their wealth and help others less fortunate. In what respect are you challenging the rich to share their wealth and help others less fortunate? In what respect are you doing that?
Well, I mean, what we're trying... My point there was actually about, from a faith point of view, I believe that I've got to use the skills, abilities and experiences I have to actually, make an impact as best I can to uplift as many New Zealanders as possible.
Challenging the rich to share their wealth?
Well, that's exactly what you've seen You've seen many wealthy people actually putting foundations to places. I was with a number of New Zealand... I've seen about one New Zealander in particular who's doing incredible work on education. I've seen other wealthy New Zealanders doing incredible work around making
about
sure...
philanthropy?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some real generous people in New Zealand who are successful, who've worked really hard, may have come from tough backgrounds. But I just say to you, there's sort of a bit of a thing which is, we don't want to castigate successful people and through innuendo imply that they're doing something wrong. We need successful people in New Zealand in order to create the wealth creation and actually to support our social institutions and our system.
Okay. In terms of fairness in that system, IRD did a study a couple of years ago looking at the 300 top wealthy Kiwis. They said that they paid a median tax rate of 9.4% compared to a middle wealth Kiwi who was paying about 20%. I mean, what's fair about a system where the super wealthy pay half the tax rate that a worker pays?
Well, I could attack that David Parker study about unrealised gains and all
the
that kind of stuff, and paper assets and all that sort of stuff.
Largely it is because we don't have capital gains taxes, isn't it?
But let's have that conversation, right? Let's just take a step back. What has been the biggest problem under national-led governments or Labour-led governments in New Zealand over the last 30 years? The bottom line is that we have failed to drive economic productivity. We're in the bottom quarter of probably the developed countries for 30 plus years now. And the reality is that when you look at what drives productivity and economic growth, there's some things that we need to invest in very, very strongly. We haven't done that job. That is our major problem here in New Zealand, that New Zealanders are working incredibly hard, but despite how hard they're working, they're actually not being able to raise significantly the quality of living.
I'm glad that you raised productivity, because doesn't the absence of a capital gains tax and also the reintroduction of interest deductibility for landlords skew investment into the housing and in housing investment, property investment, which is an utterly unproductive area? It doesn't employ people at all, and yet your incentives have piled the attraction into property investment.
But let's take renters, right? So, we've got a problem in the housing market.
I'm talking about economic productivity.
Let me get there. I mean, so what I'm saying is, if you look at the rental market, for example, what have we done? We've reinstated the interest deductibility, quite a normal, legitimate business expense done by every business across the world and in this country. We've also made sure that we've pulled the bright line test back to 2 years to catch genuine property speculators as a result. And we've also rebalanced the rules between tenants and landlords. What's happened subsequently? Rents have been stable, if not trending down, over the period of our government. Why? Because those costs that were imposed on those landlords, and remember, people like to present landlords as actually being, super rich folk who've got, a property. I get all that. But actually, the reality is it's mum and dad investors who have bought 1 or 2 rental properties to augment their retirement savings. It's the deputy principal that I've met that's got a windfall from her mum's estate and has actually gone off and bought that house. So I'm just saying to you, there's a classic example, because you've got to get to root cause and problem definition.
But you haven't addressed the fact that you've got massive incentive into the property investment sector, which isn't productive for the New Zealand economy. Is it?
But that's why we've got to get back to the bigger issue, which is actually the root cause of New Zealand's economic challenges, is investing in productivity. We need to be making sure that we get the world-class education system. We embrace more science technology, better modern reliable infrastructure, get rid of red tape and national pensions.
On capital gains tax, why are you so opposed to it? I mean, a recent poll from Ipsos, 65% said that they would in some form support a capital gains tax. I mean, are they wrong?
Well, again, I just don't think it's the right way to deal with the recession. You don't tax your way out of a recession. You need to grow your way out of a recession.
But that's a facile response.
No,
I mean,
it's not
no one's
facile.
talking about taxing their way out of a recession.
Because
I mean, maybe you could tax your way into having the amount of revenue that would allow you to build a proper health system, for example. I mean, you're gaining revenue in that respect, and you're also getting people to hopefully invest into a share market or something that is productive rather than just investment property.
So what we've got to do, Guyon, is that's why I'm saying you've got to have a bigger conversation, because we've seen a government that taxed more, hired more, borrowed more, spent more, right? And it didn't work. We've got the car in the ditch. Thanks to the previous administration. We're pulling it out, granted. We've got it into first and second gear. We've got to go much harder at it. What do we have to do? We have to grow this country, because it's been a 30-year problem. And actually just talking about how you might adjust pizza slices, we can talk about it. But if Labor really cared about it, why didn't they support index increases for low and middle income working New Zealanders? And they didn't. It's not an ideological idea. We have given income tax relief for the first time in 14 years to low and middle income working New Zealanders. But we need to have a bigger conversation about how we actually create more wealth in this country. And that's the really exciting opportunity.
You shifted the bright line test back, as you said, right, for investment properties for 2 years. That was effective from July 1 this year, right? A couple of months later, you sell your Wellington apartment. So instead of the $70,000 tax bill you could have got, you get a tax-free capital gain of $180,000.
Yeah, so then that's a classic, isn't it? Like, I mean, every other Prime Minister who's then moving into Premier House gets to sell their apartment. So do you think I should have to keep the apartment, or can I not sell it if I'm now living in Premier House?
But did you hold off selling that until the rules changed and you didn't have to pay the tax?
Yeah. We got a report at the end of the year to say Premier House is in disrepair.
Can you really tell me, though, Prime Minister, that you didn't consider the timing of the bright line test?
Yeah, absolutely. Did not consider it, didn't
even come into your mind?
Didn't come into my mind.
Right.
Because, to be honest, Guyon, if you seriously thought I wanted to come to politics to become wealthy, that's not why I've chosen to come to politics, because I think New Zealand can do a hell of a lot better than what it's been doing. It's got innate potential. I want to realise that. In that particular case, as you well know, Premier House is in a state of disrepair. The report says we need to spend $30 million on it to make it a healthy home and to meet earthquake standards, all that sort of stuff. What we have done over that first 6 months is to make sure we can get some new paint, new carpet, new curtains, and I've moved in.
Are you totally ruling out a capital gains tax as long as you're Prime Minister?
Yes, because I don't believe that's the right answer for New Zealand. And I appreciate that people in tough times want to grasp around for a solution. But we have tried this. We've had a Labor Party present this 3 or 4 times. If you are a KiwiSaver person, if you have got your investments, if you're a plumber who's built a great business, if you're a farmer...
what about just on investment properties, though?
Well, I'm just saying to you, it doesn't make sense. We need to get more capital into this country. We are 38th out of 38th in the OECD at attracting capital to New
and
Zealand.
we're also one of 3
capital.
countries without a capital gains tax.
Yeah, sure, but go to Sydney, look at the capital gains tax there, and compare house prices in Sydney.
Well, let's go to Sydney, because we had 130,000 New Zealanders leaving in the year to June 2024, eh?
Yeah.
130,000.
Yeah.
They're looking at your government and voting with their feet. I mean, isn't
I
that
think
damning?
that's somewhat disingenuous in the sense of we've been in power 6 or 7 months on the basis of that data. But the point is a fair one, which is that is our job, is that New Zealand needs desperately a turnaround. What we have been doing for the last period of time has not been working. So we are going to try something different. There is a reason the New Zealand people voted for us and our government. I appreciate people on the other side may or may not like it, but we have been elected through a democracy to run this government and to get change. So our job is very simple. We have to rebuild the economy so that people feel if they work hard, they can get ahead. Those young people, my kids in particular, as I think about, or our grandkids ultimately down the road, we've got to build a country and that there is opportunity for them. So that does mean fix the economy so it's more productive.
Talk to that person directly. Talk to them right now.
Yeah, so
let's say I'm 30 years old
Yeah.
and I'm looking to go online and book my flight over to Sydney because I don't see my prospects here. What are you saying to that 30-year-old?
Well, what I'd say to them is, look, New Zealand has a great future. I am more excited today, 11 months in, than I was when I started, and I'm a born optimist. I think we have a fantastic future to build the best small advanced country on earth, period. Why do I say that? I look out, we're bang smack in this Indo-Pacific region with middle classes growing, huge opportunity for New Zealand's products and services. Yes, there's tensions in global democracies, but relatively, yes, we have strong liberal democracy and social institutions. We have abundant natural resources, no reason why we shouldn't be able to grow.
Do you reckon that's going to swing that, guys?
No, but I'm just trying to give you the lot, because in the spirit, and then the last piece I'd say is that we've got incredibly talented people. So now my job as the Prime Minister, a new Prime Minister of New Zealand, and my government's job is to make sure that that young person sees that there is opportunity here, that if they do work hard, they actually can get ahead, that their pay will, and that's about economic productivity, make sure that they do feel safe moving around their homes, their businesses, their communities, make sure that their kids will get a world-class education that will set them up well for a future, and make sure that their parents themselves can access healthcare. Now, that's the plan that we are working towards, and we've made progress on all of those elements. Yes, there's a lot more to do, but that's good stuff.
Let's capture some of that.
Yeah.
Can we continue to be a low-tax country with high levels of public service? Because it looks like that's a circle that you're trying to square.
Well, I'll just say to you, we had a previous government spent 84% more money. They hired 18,000 more public servants, and our social outcomes went backwards. So it's not just about the amount of money, and you've got to make sure it's well funded, and we've got enough money to, we've got money going in. The best that we can put in, we put in. But equally, it's about what you do with it. And I think what there has been is a huge lack of good financial discipline and management across the New Zealand system. It's about making sure when I put a record amount of money into healthcare, $17 billion more going in over the next 3 years, that money has to go into a system that's going to deliver improved outcomes for New Zealanders.
You've got Lester Levy cutting $2 billion from the health system.
And what I've got is...
That's the challenge for him, isn't it?
No, but
$2 billion.
Yeah, but I'll just say to you, what we're trying to do in healthcare, which is a very complex system, and I just put to you, if New Zealand was twice as wealthy, like Ireland is twice as wealthy as New Zealand, they have 2 to 2.5 times the number of medical staff in their healthcare system because their economic engine and their economy supports those public services. But in healthcare, we've got a series of particular challenges in New Zealand. One is we have to make sure the funding's in place. So we spend $30 billion, we're putting another $17 billion in over 3 years.
But you're going to cut $2 billion.
No, but the money, I'm talking about incremental money going into the system that we've committed to in budget. The next thing is we need... How is Lester Levy going to cut $2 billion from the health system without affecting frontline services? Well, as you well know, it was a perverse restructure that happened and a botched restructure. You had almost, you had 14 layers from chair down to patient. You had 2,500 management added in on a merger of 20 DHBs, and you've ended up with an unwieldy organisation called Health New Zealand that's actually not delivering for the New Zealand people. We have incredible nurses, incredible doctors. We've got workforce challenges there, no doubt about it, but we now have hired 2,900 extra nurses since we've come to power, and we have 29,000 nurses in the system. We have more doctors coming into the system. Can
Kiwis have trust in the public health system?
Yes, they can. They can, but we need a better performance from it because under the previous administration, where we sit today, the reality is we're not meeting the public's expectations.
We're not, and there's been a huge surge. 250,000 people in the last couple of years have signed up to private health insurance. Yep. It's now 1.5 million of us, and that tells me that there's a signal that they are worried.
Yeah, but that's why...
They are worried about the state of the public health system.
And we are worried about it too.
Well, hang on, you were just about to say, and they should be, weren't you?
Well, no, but we are worried about the healthcare system, and that's why we're taking the steps that we have. You've got to get the funding in place, which we've got in our budget. We've spent a huge amount of money.
You're stripping $2 billion out.
No, but just hang on and listen to what I'm trying to say. If we spend $30 billion, we're adding another $17 billion, plus the $2 billion in Farm Act, plus the cancer drugs, that's up. There's money going into the system. The next question is, actually, is the system delivering its targets? It's not. So what are the targets? What is everyone in the healthcare system there to try and improve at this point in time that needs to be better? Shorter wait list times, faster cancer treatments, better immunisation.
You're claiming that you can do this.
No.
That you can do more with less money. That's
not less money.
Your argument.
How are you arguing there's less money going into healthcare, though?
Well, he's going to strip $2 billion out from where we were.
But what we've got is $30 billion of existing expenditure, another $17 billion, the record amount of money ever spent on health in New Zealand's history, going into our healthcare system. There is enough money in the system. The question is, what are we doing with that money to deliver those outcomes? And that's why we're setting the clear targets so that everyone knows what they're there to do, and we can measure whether the money is actually driving towards improving those outcomes. It's a philosophical difference for how we run this government. I'm a big believer of it's taxpayers' money. It comes to our government. We have an a very serious responsibility to make sure it's well spent. And it's actually, yes, the amount of money is important, but how you spend it really matters. What value for money you create and what return you create for that investment. Whether it's in the economic space, the social space, infrastructure, anywhere.
Yeah. Just a couple of minutes left. Is there one thing that you've changed your mind on since coming into office? You've changed your mind on. We got that wrong. I was wrong. I've changed my mind.
In the 11 months that we've had so far.
That you've been in the term that you've been Prime Minister, in the time that you've been Prime Minister.
Look, the only regret, as I said on day one to my cabinet colleagues, is that when this comes to an end, which inevitably it will with all political cycles, the only regret we will have is that we didn't go fast enough and we weren't bold enough. So we are doing government in quite a different way. We are asking more from the public service in terms of accountability, in terms of delivery. New Zealanders have been...
So there's nothing you've changed your mind on?
Not materially, no. I mean, I'm sure, I've made mistakes. I could have expressed things better, I'm sure. But actually, to be where we sit 12 months down the road in a really tough time with the support that we've got, with people feeling more confident that we can get ourselves there, we are marching our way out of a hole and getting this thing turned around. And that means we're being very, very focused about what we are choosing to do and what we're not choosing to do. It is about the economy. It is about law and order. It is about public services.
Are you going to ditch the management speak?
Sorry?
Are you going to ditch the management?
Well, I'll keep working on it, But again, I think it's great that we've got someone who's come from outside the system, along with lots of people from lots of different backgrounds, and that someone like me can be in political life in New Zealand and hopefully bringing some skills to the job that are necessary.
Thanks very much for coming in today.
Pleasure.
Really appreciate your time.
Guy.
That was 30 Minutes with the Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon. This is 30 with me, Guyon Espiner. We'll catch you next time.